Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started this evening. Thank you for joining us. This is our part of our summer series for orientation. This particular presentation is about billing and financial aid, and it is called Dollars and Cents. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Catherine Deacon. I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid, and I do have some colleagues with me that I'd like to introduce as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them so that they can introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Michelle Jarvis-Letman, and I am the bursar at the University of Hartford, and welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Negron. I'm the Assistant Director of Scholarship Management within Financial Aid.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra Eckelman, and I'm one of the Assistant Directors in Financial Aid.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. Again, I am Catherine Deacon, Director of Student Financial Aid. I am going to go ahead and keep my video off for the rest of the evening, just so that we have enough bandwidth since we have a number of attendees on with us this evening. We are very excited to have you here. Normally, under normal circumstances, you would be receiving this information as part of orientation. Obviously, the university is currently operating remotely, and so we are finding virtual ways to connect with our students and families, particularly about this important but sometimes overwhelming and confusing topic such as billing and financial aid. So we do hope that this evening will shed a little light on the process for you and hopefully answer many of your questions. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. I do ask that you all save your questions till the end of the presentation. As we go through, I'm sure I'm going to answer many questions, but we will definitely leave time at the end where you'll be able to provide questions to both myself and my colleagues that are joining me this evening. We also ask that you provide your questions in the Q&A box. So you will see two boxes available to you. There is the chat feature and then the Q&A feature. To make it easier for us, we just ask that you pop your questions over in the Q&A. And again, I'll let you know when it's time to go ahead and get started, where we'll be opening up the question and answer or the live Q&A later on. Again, we are currently working remotely, and so our office, as well as the bursar office at the University of Hartford, is currently operating remotely. We've just begun transitioning back to campus, that we are able to take your phone calls on a limited basis throughout the day, but we are still available via email during normal business hours as well, and we'll provide all of our contact information at the end of the presentation. So just briefly, a quick agenda. I am going to go over some general university resources that are impactful for the financial aid and billing process. I'm then going to jump into some information about financial aid, just giving you information about what type of financial aid might be available to your student. But beyond that, kind of if your financial aid isn't covering your costs, what options exist to help you through that process. I'm then going to go into some greater detail about how billing works here at the University of Hartford. And then again, at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for a question and answer session. So jumping right in, I am going to mention to you the Center for Student Success. Obviously, you have been receiving lots of information from our Center for Student Success on campus, as they're the ones that are putting on this orientation summer series. But our Center for Student Success is sort of our one-stop shop for all things advising and financial administrative services. So all of our first-year advisors, which your student has likely met at this point, either through the orientation process or through, potentially just getting acquainted with the university, they should have already met their first-year advisor. In addition to that, housed in the Center for Student Success is our financial and administrative services area. They handle things such as registration, potentially making payments while on campus, general information about financial aid. If you're not sure where to go on campus and you have a question, the Center for Student Success is a great starting point. Students don't have to have an appointment as of right now. We're not sure what that might look like in the fall. But as of right now, students don't need to make an appointment. They can just head over to our Denver Student Union on campus and walk in and sit down and meet one-on-one to get the support that they need. The Student Self-Service Center is an online portal which grants students access to academic and financial services. So this is where students can log in to register for classes, not for this particular semester, but in future semesters, students will register themselves, and they'll do that right through the Student Self-Service portal. They can view their bill, they can pay their bill, they can actually take action on their financial aid award. So many of you may have received a paper copy of the financial aid award letter in the mail. You can always view a live feed of what's happening with the Student's Financial Aid Award right through the Self-Service Center. Students are also able to see if they have any financial aid documents that they need to submit to our office right there through self-service. Students should have received their login information in their University of Hartford email address. So they should have logged into their University of Hartford email address and been able to see their information on how to log into the Student Self-Service Center. If they haven't done that yet, please encourage them to do that as soon as possible because there might be documentation out there or there might be things out there that they need to take action on. So please make sure that they've done that. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is an act that institutions of higher education must follow in regards to privacy. So this is commonly referred to as FERPA, much like when you go to the doctor's office, your doctor has to follow HIPAA policies. Essentially, once a student is an attendee of the University of Hartford, this particular act goes into place. So this will go into play the first day of classes for the fall semester. The student record belongs to the student, and so in order for our offices to share any information with students, any information with anyone but the student must designate access. In order to do that, students are able to log into the Student Self-Service portal, and under the Student tab, they will see a FERPA Contacts link, and that's where they'll be able to add somebody other than themselves to release information. The student designates who and what information may be available to you if you call our office. So things like financial aid and billing. As of right now, we're freely talking to you about that information, but again, on the first day of classes, we will not be able to do that. So a really important task that the student should take care of over the summer if they haven't done so already. This particular picture that you see on the screen right now is actually a picture of the Bates House on campus. Bates House is the only White House with red shutters on campus, and it is where the financial aid office lives on campus. So we do share this building with undergraduate admission. So if you did have an opportunity to come for a tour before campus started working remotely, you may have already visited this particular office. We are generally open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And you will see our contact information on the screen there. Under normal circumstances, students are welcome to come into our office and meet one-on-one with a financial aid representative. During business hours, they do not need an appointment, but things will be a bit different this fall semester, so that's just something to keep in mind moving forward, and we'll share lots of information with students about that as the time comes. So moving on, here is a breakdown of our financial aid staff. Each student is assigned a financial aid staff member that will be with them through their 4 years at the University of Hartford. So again, I've given you a breakdown. It is divided by college. So we have Kathy with us this evening, who is the assistant director who manages the College of Arts and Sciences. As Liz mentioned, she does scholarship management, so she is mainly involved in working with all students on our scholarship process. And so she doesn't necessarily have a particular population. That being said, if a student's particular financial aid counselor isn't available, certainly they are welcome to meet with any financial aid counselor. It does not have to just be theirs, but they are able to build a relationship with their financial aid counselor and get to know them. And we are able to get to know your family's financial circumstances so that we can help you through the process and make this as easy as possible for you. So what is financial aid? So financial aid is essentially a combination of all 4 of the things that you see on your screen right now. It is a combination of grants and scholarship opportunities that a student might be eligible for, loan opportunities both in the student's name as well as in the parent's name, and then employment opportunities. And the financial aid office at the University of Hartford handles all of those opportunities. So we will work with your family to kind of use a combination of all four of those things to make the University of Hartford's education most affordable. Most students have already received a copy of their financial aid award letter, and it would have been sent in the mail. But again, as I mentioned earlier, they are able to view their financial aid award letter in real time through the Student Self-Service Center and that online portal. Generally speaking, we have made our best financial aid offer up front, but if it doesn't cover your full cost to attend the University of Hartford, I'm going to share more information about ways that you might be able to get some additional aid. Academic and Talent Awards. When the student was admitted to the University of Hartford, they were automatically reviewed for academic and talent awards based on a few different criteria. High school GPA, SAT scores, potentially, depending upon their major, an opportunity for either an audition or a portfolio review to be eligible for talent awards. Again, they would have known about this particular award offer at their time of admission to the university. So that's all through our admission department. Generally speaking, academic and talent awards are renewable for 4 years or the equivalent of 8 semesters at the University of Hartford, and that's for full-time coursework. So for 12 credits or more per semester. These awards would have been included as part of the full financial aid award letter. And so that, again, they can be viewed on self-service. Besides maintaining full-time enrollment at the university, some of these academic and talent awards do have GPA criteria that students might be required to meet. That is a 3.0 or a 3.25 GPA in some cases. In other cases, it's just a requirement for maintaining minimum satisfactory academic progress standards, which I'll go into more detail about in a little bit. But again, just something to keep in mind that there may be some academic criteria required to renew these awards from academic year to academic year. If the student is not sure what that academic criteria may be, they should log into the Student Self-Service Center and actually hover over the name of their scholarship, and it will tell them what the renewability criteria is of that particular award. Some students may have also applied for need-based financial aid funding. In order to apply for need-based financial aid funding at the University of Hartford, students must complete the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA form. At this point in time, we are still accepting FAFSAs for the fall of 2020. So if you haven't completed the FAFSA form, but you think that you'd like to apply for need-based financial aid, it is definitely not too late. Students can complete the FAFSA form at studentaid.gov. So it's an online way to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA does collect both demographic and financial information for both the student and the parent. Once we receive the FAFSA, we are going to review the FAFSA results, and we're going to look at what is called the expected family contribution. The expected family contribution, or EFC, is a need index that, based on that demographic and financial data, is kind of where your family's need level falls in comparison to other students who have completed the FAFSA form. We then use that number to determine eligibility for both institutional, state, and federal financial aid funds. So we will review all students for that automatically once we receive their FAFSA form. For example, you may see listed on your financial aid award letter a university grant, a federal Pell Grant, our Roberta Willis Scholarship Program that we participate in, and again, these will automatically be reviewed for and awarded based on the results of the FAFSA form. The FAFSA form must be renewed every year. So we do have a due date for our returning students to complete the FAFSA form by April 1st of every year. It does become available on October 1st of every year. So it's a good idea to just kind of put a reminder to yourself that sometime in October to log in and go ahead and complete the FAFSA form so that the student is ready to be renewed for need-based financial aid award funds every year. And generally speaking, need-based award funds are going to stay the same from year to year. As long as there are no major shifts in the family's income information or the information that's put on the FAFSA, these need-based award funds should stay the same. That being said, of course, if there are shifts in either direction, we may either reduce or increase need-based awarding from year to year. So that's just something to keep in mind. One type of need-based aid opportunity that I'd like to kind of go into more detail about is our federal work study program. This particular federal program allocates funding for students to work on campus and earn a biweekly paycheck. So students may see this on their financial aid award letter, so we would automatically renew this based on the results of the FAFSA form. You will not see this listed on a student's bill. So some of you may have already received the bill via the student self-service portal and through CashNet. You would not see federal work study listed there. The student, however, would be able to see it in the Student Self-Service Center under their financial aid award. The reason it's not listed on the bill is because students earn these funds as they work over the course of the academic year. Unfortunately, there is a limited amount of funding for the federal work study program, so not all students that are eligible to receive this funding are able to receive it. That being said, we do have a wait list for these funds, and we always take students off the wait list every academic year. So we would be happy to add the student to the wait list if they don't see it as part of their financial aid award, but think that they would like to work on campus and earn that biweekly paycheck. For our current recipients of the federal work study program, again, if you see it listed on your financial aid award, we will be sending an email out later this summer with some additional information about how to go about finding a job on campus. Many of our offices on campus hire work study students to work. Additionally, I do want to mention that students who don't have federal work study and who are ineligible for it based on their need level can still work on campus. So we do have a number of different offices on campus that will hire students that don't have federal work study as part of their financial aid. And it's very similar in that the student will still earn a biweekly paycheck, and they can then use that funding to help pay for educational expenses. We always suggest that students reach out to our Career and Professional Development Center on campus, who can help them facilitate searching for on-campus jobs as well. The University of Hartford does participate in the Federal Direct Loan Program. The Federal Direct Loan Program is based on the results of the FAFSA, so much like the need-based awards that I mentioned before. There are two loans that a student may see listed on their financial aid award letter. The first is what we call the Subsidized Direct Loan Program. The Subsidized Direct Loan Program is a loan program that is in the student's name. The student does not need a credit-worthy cosigner, does not need to complete any additional application. It is strictly based on the results of the FAFSA. The Subsidized Loan Program does have their principal payment as well as interest deferred while they are in school. So there will be no interest accruing on that particular loan program while the student is in school. The interest rate on that loan program right now is the lowest that we've seen it in quite a while at a fixed 2.75% interest rate. The other loan program that you may see listed on a student's financial aid award letter is the unsubsidized direct loan. Essentially, this mirrors the subsidized direct loan in that principal payments are not due while the student is in school. However, interest will accrue on that particular loan program while the student is in school. The interest rate on that particular loan is a fixed 2.75%, just like the subsidized loan. Again, I just want to reiterate that the main difference between these two is that the subsidized portion of the loan program does not have interest while the student is in school, and the unsubsidized does have interest. Both loan programs do not require any type of payments to be made towards those loans. The amount of the loans are fixed and are determined by the U.S. Department of Education and based on the student's need level. So what has been offered as part of the student's financial aid award letter is a fixed amount. We cannot increase it. In addition to that, if the student wasn't eligible for the subsidized portion, it means based on need they were ineligible. And so we are not able to make changes in that regard either. Repayment on these loans will begin 6 months after graduation or separation from the university. So again, no payments need to be made while the student is in school. There are two requirements that students must complete in order to go ahead and move forward with these particular loan programs. And that is both completing a loan agreement as well as an entrance counseling. The loan agreement and entrance counseling are completed online at studentaid.gov. These particular requirements are basically an opportunity for the student to learn more about the loan program, to understand what their rights and responsibilities are as a student loan borrower, to understand how repayment is going to work on this, and those other important factors. The last thing that I want to mention about the Federal Direct Loan Program is that there is an origination fee taken out of the loan prior to disbursement. And essentially, What that means is that before the funds are sent to the University of Hartford from the U.S. Department of Education, they do take out a 1.066% fee. And so when you're viewing the student's bill and the pending transactions, and I'll show this to you a little bit later on in the presentation, you will see that if the student may have been borrowing $1,000 for the semester, that amount will only apply at $990 for the semester. So again, there will be a little bit of a difference there, and that's as a result of the fee that is charged by the U.S. Department of Education. That was my mistake, sorry about that. Financing your education. So there are additional opportunities besides the opportunities that I've mentioned in terms of need-based aid, as well as academic and talent-based aid. And so sometimes the aid that we have offered to a student is not enough to cover the cost that the university is charging. And so we are here to help you figure out kind of what is the best option for your family. How do you use a combination of some of the options I'm going to go over next to help cover your costs? And these options include payment plan arrangements, additional loan opportunities, and some outside scholarship funds. So again, we're going to go into some more detail about these additional options. The first option I'd like to discuss as a way to cover some additional costs that a student might incur is the Federal Direct Plus loan. So again, this is a federal loan program offered through the U.S. Department of Education, much like the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan. The big difference here, though, is that this particular loan program is in the parent's name. So the parent kind of has the responsibility for repayment. On the subsidized and then the unsubsidized loan, the student has the obligation for repayment. So again, this is an opportunity for a parent to take a loan out on the student's behalf to cover their educational expenses. This particular loan program does require an additional application, so the parent must log on to studentaid.gov in order to complete that particular application. You'll use the same login information you used to complete the FAFSA, just to make a note of that. So again, the parent is going to complete an application. It's going to ask for information about who the student is and where the student is attending school, and then it's going to ask them information about the parents. The parent is going to go through a credit check. And for this particular loan program, they are going to be looking for the absence of adverse credit. And so what that means is that they're looking for 4 main factors to be missing from the credit history: no foreclosures, no accounts more than 60 days past due, no bankruptcy, and no previously defaulted student loan. If those particular things are missing from the credit history, so that those things are not on your credit history, you have a very good chance of being approved for this particular loan program. This particular loan program will not look at a debt-to-income ratio, will not look at necessarily your credit score. So again, those 4 factors are the main things that it's looking for. If for some reason the application for the Federal Direct Plus loan is denied, the parent does have some additional options that they can pursue. They can either appeal that denial directly through studentaid.gov or the U.S. Department of Education. They are able to go ahead and have someone creditworthy endorse that particular loan or co-sign on that loan for them if they choose to. If not, the student does become eligible for an additional $4,000 in the unsubsidized direct loan, as I mentioned previously. So I mentioned earlier that those amounts are fixed. The only time they are not fixed is if for some reason the parent is denied the parent loan and unable to borrow. If the parent is approved for the loan, the interest rate on that loan is going to be a fixed 5.3%. Again, the lowest that we've seen in quite a while. So it is a very good option for families to pursue if they choose to. Much like the subsidized and the unsubsidized, there is an origination fee of 4.264% taken out prior to the funds being sent to the university. So that is just something that you have to keep in mind as you're going through the application process. Again, much like the subsidized and the unsubsidized, parents do need to complete the loan agreement at studentaid.gov as well. Again, just giving them more information about their rights and responsibilities of being a student loan borrower. So again, this is a good option for parents who are willing to go ahead and take out some additional loans to help cover their expenses, the expenses for their child to attend the University of Hartford. Another option that families might consider are what we call private or alternative loans. Private or alternative loans are generally loans that are offered not through the U.S. Department of Education or any federal borrower. These are loans that are offered through private lenders. So some lenders you may have heard of before include Sallie Mae student loans, Discover student loans, Wells Fargo student loans, just to name a couple. The University of Hartford does maintain a list of some suggested lenders right on our website at hartford.edu/FinAid. If you click on the loan section, you'll see a tab that lists private/alternative loans. And we do maintain a list, and you can kind of sort through that list about different criteria that you might consider, whether or not the interest rate is fixed or if there's a variable interest rate on that particular loan. Unlike the federal loans, I can't give you too much information about this particular process, but I can give you a couple of things to think about. First of all, private and alternative loans generally are in the student's name. Students then have to go through a credit history check. And many of you are now thinking, well, my child is 18 and hasn't had enough time to build credit. And you're absolutely right. Almost all undergraduate students are going to need a creditworthy cosigner that can cosign on these loans for them, or I should say with them. That being said, the student still has the obligation for repayment on these loans, and it is only if they don't make payments on the loans that the cosigner then becomes responsible for repayment. My office can work with families to help them determine kind of what private or alternative loan they should choose, or they can also give them information, kind of some tidbits. And so here's what I'm going to tell you now. A couple of things to think about when you're choosing a private or an alternative loan. First of all, what is the interest rate? So they're going to give you a range of interest rates on these particular loan programs. And so you want to pay close attention to that. The interest rate is going to be heavily dependent upon the cosigner's credit history. Repayment options. Some private and alternative loans require repayment while the student is in school. So that's something to think about. Do you have the ability to make payments on that particular loan while the student is in school? Another thing you want to consider is whether or not cosigner release is an option on that loan. So I mentioned that the majority of undergraduate students require a cosigner on their loans. So some lenders allow for students who have made a number of on-time consecutive payments to release the cosigner from that particular loan for them. So again, these are just a couple of things to keep in mind when you're choosing a lender. The University of Hartford will be notified directly from your lender if you've been approved for that loan, and we will credit the funds when we receive them directly from the lender. Another option that I always mention to families is about applying for additional scholarships outside of the university. At this point in time, it's probably late to begin applying for additional scholarships outside of the university for the fall of 2020 because many of the deadlines have passed. But I always mention it as part of this particular presentation because I want families to continue to think about doing that for future years. So years 2, 3, and 4, a lot of times students just kind of forget to apply for those additional scholarships. They don't have directly a guidance office that's constantly sending them scholarships and that sort of thing. The University of Hartford Financial Aid Office does maintain a list on our website of search engines that students can use to facilitate applying for these additional scholarship funds. We also, as we receive local scholarships or scholarships that our students might be eligible for, we will post them in our weekly newsletter called U-Notes. We will also keep them in our office, and we maintain kind of a centralized location right in Bates House where students can come and kind of flip through different scholarship opportunities that exist. So again, a bunch of different ways where students can continue to facilitate searching. I always tell families the best time to start looking at these is the break between fall and spring semester. It's an excellent time for students to, while they have some downtime and don't have to worry about classes, begin applying for scholarship opportunities for the next academic year. So again, a little late right now for fall of 2020, but definitely still an opportunity for students to apply for additional scholarship funds for future years. So just to wrap up the financial aid portion of the evening, just a couple of things. So what's next? I mentioned earlier that sometimes the University of Hartford Financial Aid Office will post additional requirements that students need to complete right in the Student Self-Service Center. Sometimes the reason for those additional requirements is because the student was selected for a process called verification. Verification is essentially when the U.S. Department of Education tells the Student Financial Aid Office, check the student's FAFSA, make sure that all of the information is correct. And so what we have to do is collect additional tax information, have the parents and the student sign off on some additional worksheets and that sort of thing. So if the student was selected for verification, they should be able to see that right in their self-service center as early as tonight. So you can log in right now and see if there's anything additional that the student might need to complete. So that is very important because not completing verification will hold up financial aid from being applied to the student account. And I'll explain to you kind of how you can see all of that a little bit later on in our billing section. But again, it is very important that students get that completed sooner rather than later. We might make other document requests, such as we might need a copy, we might need to make a copy of a student's passport. Students do have to accept the terms and conditions of their financial aid award every year. All of that information does need to be completed sooner rather than later as well. I mentioned earlier that academic progress is needed in order to renew some of our academic and talent awards. Well, it's also needed to renew any need-based awards. So in order for a student to continue to be eligible for any type of financial aid, they need to meet minimum academic standards. So academic progress is a measure of a kind of two factors. The first is a measure of the cumulative GPA for the student. That will vary by college. So students, if they're not sure what it is for their particular major, for their particular college, they can either reach out to the financial aid office or they could reach out to their first year advisor who can give them more information about that. In addition to that, it is a successful completion of credits. And usually it's between 24 and 28 credits per academic year. Again, heavily dependent upon what college the student is in and what major they're in. So again, those are just the minimum standards that are needed in order for a student to progress towards their degree and continue to be eligible for financial aid. Moving on to some more information about billing at the University of Hartford. First of all, the Office of the Bursar is also operating remotely, much like the Financial Aid Office right now, but they have begun some limited hours in office, not for students to come visit the office, but for students to be able to call the office to ask some of their questions, and they're also available always via email, and you'll see the email address listed on the screen right now. When campus is open, you'll see this picture here is a picture of our administration building on campus, and on the second floor of that particular building is where our Bursar office is. Every semester before a student is eligible to register for classes, they do need to complete the enrollment terms and conditions. And so basically what this means is that the students need to sign off that they understand what it means to be enrolled at the University of Hartford. Also, as part of that, you can authorize the electronic delivery of the 1098-T statement, which is a tax statement that you may need in order to file taxes from year to year for education credits and that sort of thing. So just something to keep in mind that students do need to complete this every year. Tuition and fees at the University of Hartford. So we do have a centralized location on the university website where you can see a full breakdown of tuition and fees at the University of Hartford. Generally speaking, full-time tuition is for between 12 and 18 credits per semester. So students who are below 12 credits and above 18 credits may see different charges. But again, to maintain financial aid and to maintain that academic progress, students need to be in that full-time status load. Full-time tuition is a flat rate, so it doesn't fluctuate based on the number of classes between that 12 and 18 credits. There are some mandatory fees that the University of Hartford charges to all students. There's a registration fee, a technology fee, and a student support services fee, which includes health and counseling services on campus, and some additional, pieces that, students can be involved on campus for various things, and that fee encompasses all of those things. 2 colleges on campus do have a very specific fee for their colleges due to the services that they provide, and that's Hillier College as well as the Hart School. So again, something to keep in mind. You'll see this all listed and itemized on the student's billing statement. So you should, again, be able to see that there. Sometimes there are course-specific fees associated with a particular course that a student might be taking at the university, such as the lab or a course that might have additional software that's required for that particular course. What I will say is for this first fall semester, you will not see course-specific fees listed on the bill. And the reason for that is students haven't been registered for their courses just yet. In future semesters, those students will be registered before their bill comes out, and therefore they'll see any course-specific fees. We usually tell families to anticipate no more than between $100 to $300 per semester for those course-specific fees. Again, not all courses have them, so it will vary based on the student's major and course load. Room and meal plans. So when we say room and meal plans, we mean room and board. And so you're going to hear those terms used interchangeably. So the room charge is charged through the Office of Residential Life, and it's heavily dependent upon where the student is living on campus. At this point in time, all first-year students have been charged for our standard room rate for our first-year students, and that is for either Hawk Hall or our complexes in a double room. And so again, all first-year students have been charged that flat rate at this point in time. In terms of the meal plan, students select their meal plan for each academic year. That's offered through our dining services department. We have a number of different ones, and the range for their costs do vary based upon whether or not the student is receiving meals, so going into our commons dining facility and kind of swiping in and being able to, eat whatever they'd like, or using what we call dining dollars, which is more of an a la carte opportunity for students to either eat in our Jangor Student Union or in Starbucks or in Subway on campus, and paying kind of based on whatever they're choosing to eat there. The meal plan can be changed within the first 2 weeks of classes, so you can choose a less expensive meal plan within the first 2 weeks of classes, but after that first 2 weeks of classes, students can only increase their meal plan. They are not allowed to decrease their meal plan at that point in time. All students living on campus must have a meal plan, so there is not an option to not have a meal plan on campus. Additionally, commuter students, if they are interested and they think they're going to be eating many meals on campus, we do have commuter meal plans available that students can choose from, and that will be posted on their bill as well. The fall of 2020, for many reasons, is different than future semesters. But a big reason is that right now, listed on students' bills for the fall semester, they are going to reflect a reduction in housing and meal plan costs for all of our residential students. And the reason for that is you may have seen an announcement that had came out from President Woodward regarding the closing of the residential side of campus for the last 2 weeks of the semester. So we have proactively gone ahead and reduced those charges. Now, in typical terms, the charges for tuition, room, and meal plans for one semester are exactly the same in their spring semester. That's going to be a little bit different this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on and kind of point out how you can see that difference. But at this point in time, I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to go ahead and pop into the chat for all of you to have a link to the announcement that was made regarding this particular process and kind of the fall opening plan, just so that you all have that. But again, the student should have received this information directly from President Woodward. I mentioned earlier that financial aid, a couple of things may block financial aid from applying to the student account. One of the kind of big things is that the verification process may block financial aid from being applied to a student account. But there are other options, or there are other reasons why that may happen. Like there are other required documents besides verification. And we also don't